All right, Astro Boy. Who here had those classic toys growing up? No, just me. Well, even if you haven't seen the original shows, that 2009 film was hard to miss. Big, shiny CGI, right in the thick of that whole early 2000s animation craze. But was it actually any good?
See, that's the thing, right? Everyone remembers those visuals, even years later. It really did try to push things forward. Like, motion capture wasn't exactly brand new, but for animation back then, pretty cutting-edge stuff.
Oh, yeah, totally. Remember how hyped everyone was about motion capture back then? But did it actually work? Was it just a gimmick, or did it really add something to the film?
It absolutely did.
Yeah.
It's what gave the characters that really fluid, almost hyper-real movement, especially in the action scenes. Honestly, that's probably one of the areas where the film still holds up the best. Some of those sequences are spectacular. Even by today's standards, it's impressive stuff.
Mm.
I mean, the way they animated Astro flying, fighting those robots, you felt the impact. You were right there with them.
Yeah, definitely. I'm getting flashbacks to those giant robots smashing into buildings. And you know what else really blew me away back then? The sound.
Oh, for sure. They nailed the sound design in this movie. John Ottman's score is great, really epic and exciting. But it's those small details that stick with you, the clinking of metal, the whirring of machinery. Every little sound just screams, future tech, and it makes the world feel so real. Remember the scene where Astro's jet boots activate for the first time? So cool.
Oh, yeah. And it wasn't just Astro. They put so much care into the soundscapes for the whole film. You really felt like you were right there in Metro City, surrounded by robots. But we can't forget the heart of it all, right? Astro. At least visually, they seem to stick pretty close to Osamu Tezuka's original vision.
Yeah, absolutely. The overall aesthetic definitely feels very faithful to the manga and anime. They kept Astro's iconic look, the red boots, the spiky hair, the works. Same with Dr. Elephant. He's got his signature lab coat. I think for fans of the original, that visual continuity was a big deal.
Yeah, totally agree. That instant recognition is huge. It's like, boom, there he is. That's Astro Boy.
Yeah.
Okay, but what about the story itself? That's where things get a little more complicated, right? Because how do you squeeze decades of manga, all those themes and storylines, into a single film?
Right. And that's probably the biggest point of contention around the film. It hits those core Astro Boy themes, identity, what makes us human, finding your place in the world. But it's definitely a simplified take compared to the manga, which had way more room to breathe to really explore those ideas deeply.
So they streamlined it, right, for the big screen, for a wider audience, maybe those who hadn't grown up reading the manga. Can you give an example of how they simplified things?
Well, take Astro's emotional journey, for instance. In the original, it's this really complex, gradual process. He's coming to terms with being a robot, with feeling things he doesn't fully understand. In the film, that whole arc is condensed.
Hmm.
The focus is more on the external conflict, the action, which, don't get me wrong, is great, but it's definitely a different approach.
Yeah, totally get it. You can't fit all of that internal struggle into a single movie, especially when you're trying to wow audiences with giant robot fights.
Exactly. It's always a balancing act with these kinds of adaptations. But hey, even with a more streamlined story, the film still got some serious recognition.
Oh, yeah. This thing cleaned up at awards shows, right?
It did. Nominations from the Visual Effects Society, even a nod from the National Movie Awards. So even if the story wasn't for everyone, critics and industry folks definitely recognized the film as a visual powerhouse. It proved that CGI could deliver both stunning looks and thrilling action.
Okay, so let's sum this thing up. We've got incredible visual sound design that puts you right there in Metro City. They kept Astro looking like Astro, but the story might have been simplified compared to the original. What's the final word?
The 2009 Astro Boy film. It's a bit of a paradox, really. On one hand, it's this technical marvel that brought a classic character to life in a whole new way, introduced him to a new generation. But it also shows us just how difficult adapting something like Astro Boy can be. It's such a complex, layered story. It really makes you think, can you ever truly capture the heart of something like that in a single film? Or is it always going to be a trade-off?